Okay, I think we're live. We should be live, hopefully.
Hello.
Hi. Hi, Fabian. Hi, everyone. I'll never get used to it. Never. This is like, I don't know, the 18th episode, and still I'm really not used to it. Okay, I see some people joining us. Hi.
I
Hi,
have to
guys.
apologize. Maybe I made the start worse because just before the show, I was telling him about an incident I had with an interview where I completely blanked and made the situation very awkward.
Thank you so
And so
much.
and so maybe I just made this worse by telling this.
No, that's okay. Anyway, you're the star tonight, so no matter what I do or say, right? Okay, I guess hi everyone. I see some people writing something in the chat. By the way, go for it. Write stuff in the chat because we're going to have a look at that, and hopefully we can interact a little bit during the conversation. Okay, so I think I should start with the official introduction. Hi everyone, and if this is the first time you watch this is the Security Bread podcast. I'm Giorgio Perticone, and I do this from some months now, where I basically force myself to read some news from the industry, and I try to invite cool people like Fabian this time, or maybe for sure everyone will know you like Live Overflow, like the name of your YouTube channel. And yeah, Fabian is today with me to have a little conversation, because we collected a list of security news from the last week, and we will just have a chat about them, and hopefully we can have a chat also with you people watching this live. Fabian, do you want to, I don't know if you need it, but do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Fabian. I work as a penetration tester, doing mostly code audits and so forth for web applications, so more like application security, I guess. And on the side, for the past around 8 years or so, I've been running the Live Overflow YouTube channel and other social media, like on Twitter. So that's maybe where you have seen my name or face around. Yeah, so I love IT security, and I especially love like the technical details, vulnerabilities, discovering vulnerabilities, and I like to make videos about that. And yeah, so that's me.
Yeah. And I was just saying this before going live, but you and a bunch of other people started were the first content creators in the industry, and are like a very inspiration, like for people like me who are just starting this. So by the way, thank you for everything you do, right? Even if
Thanks.
you just enjoy it, and maybe you just do it because you like it, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Okay, so I think we can get it started. This is the plan. So I'm going to share my screen here. Yes, and everyone should be able to see it. And yeah, I'll briefly introduce the article that we're going to talk about, and then yeah, just let's see what we have to say about it. So this is the first one. This article talks about Intel. You surely know Intel, but they are probably the biggest company who build and sell chips, CPUs, or graphic cards, and so on and so forth. They definitely have the biggest part of the market. So most I think computers out there actually have an Intel CPU, and Intel was in the news multiple times in the last years because of some big vulnerabilities that some researchers found in their hardware. And they are big exactly because those chips are everywhere, right? So if a vulnerability affects that specific CPU, it means that potentially all of the computers that have that kind of CPU in it, or the same family of CPUs. So actually, it's not just a single one, but a list of different products with the same architecture, maybe. You also make thousands, or I don't know, hundreds of thousands of computers out there vulnerable with a single vulnerability. Some of those vulnerabilities that were very, very well known at some point were Spectre and Meltdown. Probably some of you already heard about them. I think they are mostly called side channel vulnerabilities, right? And
Yeah.
yeah.
It depends on who you ask. Some call it side channel, and I believe the Intel official term is data sampling vulnerabilities.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's just
No,
semantics, just words.
I think it's actually interesting. I think we as an industry, we actually have some issues in giving names and terms to things, right? There are so many different names for the same stuff, and sometimes it get
Yeah,
thing
I mean, you're
confusing.
absolutely right. It is a side channel. Just
Okay.
saying it's not the wrong term. I'm just saying that like the Intel, like how Intel likes to
Yeah.
talk about it, like they call it MDS,
Okay.
micro
Yeah.
architectural data sampling. But that is side channel. So you're absolutely right. I was just trying to be a smart ass.
No, no, no. That's actually super interesting. As I said, we always have multiple terms for the same things, and maybe I didn't know about that right now, and there will be many people out there which maybe never heard about it, and maybe they think they are two separated things because it's the first time they hear about it, right? So I think we should have a little more effort as an industry to, make things clear when it comes to technical things. Anyway, back to the article. We had a list of this kind of vulnerabilities in the past, in the past few years. I think like 5 or 6 years, and after the first one, there were new vulnerabilities that were pretty similar to the previous ones, and every time Intel had to find um, workarounds or patches for their technology, because the CPU are there, right? You cannot just replace all the CPUs after you find a vulnerability. And there was yet another one, I think, a few months ago, that was published during Black Hat. I don't remember the name. It should be there somewhere
That's
in
the
the
one
article.
actually that you are looking at right now. It's the downfall.
Oh,
Yeah,
Downfall. Okay, yeah, that's the
yeah,
name. Thank you so much. Um, and okay, we have another vulnerability. It could be very, very big. Of course, it depends, because they are actually pretty difficult to perpetrate, right, in an attack, right? It's not like someone, everyone or me can just go there and exploit that kind of vulnerability. It's pretty difficult, but still potentially it's very, very harmful. Mostly, I think um, they can lead to data exfiltration, right, from
yeah.
uh, different users
I
in the same environment, something like that.
Exactly. So I think that's the important thing to understand about these vulnerabilities is that when we say like all these CPUs are vulnerable, it doesn't really matter too much about like your desktop PC. There,
Mhm.
we with a small asterisk, we maybe
Yeah.
talk about this. I can add to that, but the really impactful and problematic issues are the shared CPUs in big data centers and cloud
Yep.
computing. And especially on these kind of servers, we have the most critical applications, right? Like on these servers, there are the databases from all different kind of online services are running. We have the authentication, the passwords, like everything is running on these servers, everything that is important for these businesses. And so if you have a vulnerability in a CPU that allows you to leak data from other code running on the same CPU, because these CPUs might be shared in a cloud environment between different customers, that can have extremely serious issues.
Mhm.
And so it's very critical for in that kind of environment. However, and I guess we also can discuss about this in this case a
Yeah.
little bit, because in this article it talks about a lawsuit being filed against Intel,
Hmm.
claiming, or not claiming, but saying that, or yeah, I guess claiming that Intel knew about that they were selling insecure CPUs. And I find this actually kind of a very interesting discussion to have.
Mm.
Is it is it malicious what Intel does or did, or like how do we feel about that? Do you have
Yeah.
a emotional initial intuitive feeling about this?
Yeah, I don't know. This is definitely a difficult topic, right? So we have actually it's not specified, but a bunch of people. It's actually a class action, right? So multiple people suing the company for the same reason. And the point is that okay, you Intel had multiple vulnerabilities during the time, kind of the same category, kind of the same type of vulnerability. So that their claim is that means that you don't work enough to fix those kind of issues in general. Right? And you keep pushing into the market, or you keep selling stuff that is going to be vulnerable at some point because you don't put enough effort. This is the climb, right, from the sewers. I'm not really sure how to call them. um, so it's tricky, right? It's true that they had multiple vulnerabilities, but I think everyone, whoever that sells hardware or software is always introducing new vulnerabilities just because they are um, creating code. And if you code, of course you're going to also like you don't want to do it, but you're going to put some bugs in there, you're going to put some vulnerabilities in there that's at some point someone is going to discover, and you should fix it. This is just the way
Yeah.
software and code in general is.
Yeah.
Okay,
But the
there's
claim
not just
here,
such. Yeah.
yeah. But the claim here is that Intel knew that they were insecure. It's not like that, you have some bugs that you don't know about and maybe they get discovered later. The claim here
Mhm.
is that we can assume Intel knew that there are
Mm.
security issues and still put out these products.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that is difficult. We don't know, of course, right? We don't know for
Yeah.
sure whether they really knew about the vulnerability before selling the hardware and everything. If that's true, right? If they knew exactly about that vulnerability and still sold the CPU, okay, that's big, and that's a very bad thing in my point of view. But my perception here is that if we are not 100% sure, if this is just based on the fact that okay, you continuously have the same kind of vulnerabilities, so you just don't work enough, let's say,
Mm.
that's kind of too big. And at least it's too big if we go into people suing companies to get refunds. If all the people out there using a software go and start suing companies to have refunds, or $10,000, I think this time,
Mm.
um, for every single consumer, I think that's a little too much. That's going to break the entire
Mm.
industry, right?
Yeah.
Of course, Intel cannot afford to give the $10,000 to every person who buy
Mm.
a CPU, right?
On the other hand, in real products and regular consumer products, maybe even a car, if you would find a car to be inherently insecure because they really they screwed up something with the brakes and they
Yeah,
are braking or something, then
yeah,
the customer or the company will be forced to recall and maybe pay damages if something's come. So in the end, I'm absolutely right. Like, we don't know yet, right? It's a lawsuit, and it will be tested um, whether there was malicious intent, I guess, willingly selling it, and how bad it was. But then
yeah,
here's me being a devil's advocate as well. Uh, is it really as bad as, for example, brakes failing on a car? And are there ways how a customer can still mitigate these issues? Because as we briefly mentioned, these issues are only an issue if two different customers are running on the same CPU, often not even the same CPU, but the same core on that
yeah.
CPU. The CPU has many cores, right? So um, if you are a large enterprise and you rent even cloud services, then
Yeah.
oftentimes you are even like running on your dedicated CPUs. I feel like how exposed is that threat model really? It is a problem. It is something that cloud providers have to address and think about. But for example, I believe from talking to Google researchers about these CPU vulnerabilities. By the way, I recently made a video about one of these CPU vulnerabilities from Google researchers. They, for example, as far as I understand, and I'm sure there are technical like intricacies here, but they bind individual customers on CPUs and cores so that
Mm.
you just by definition not have like multiple customers exposed to the same core. It might still be an issue because maybe there are some privileged Google processes running on the same core or something. So maybe you can, I don't know, it gets complicated. But what I'm
Yeah.
saying is, like, is it really? I mean, I understand these issues are bad and these are vulnerabilities and they should be fixed, but we are talking about a very specific threat surface and attack surface that also a big cloud company might have to address in different ways. Like, can we just maybe accept that that running on the same CPU core is not as like we could also just
Not safe.
define
Yeah.
there's no security boundary here. As
Mm.
soon as two programs run on the same CPU core, uh, you have to consider that to be compromised. We could just define it that way, and then we have to work around it. So, and to be honest, actually, I'm wondering why not Intel just says that or something. I don't know. I feel like just define it this way, and then the customers buying the hardware, they have to make the decision whether they want to buy the hardware with this thing. And now, one last addition about the lawsuit. For me, it would be important if they knew, then they should have talked about it. I don't mind that there are vulnerabilities, and I understand it's hardware hard to fix. And I don't think it's a bad or insecure product in some sense that you shouldn't buy it because of it. But if they knew about it, they should be more public about it. They are very public with the known vulnerabilities, but if it's like really the case that they knew internally about security issues that they haven't publicly talked about and said like this Intel CPU firmware version, whatever, has these issues, that I find then problematic. And I would hope that through a lawsuit, maybe in the future they are then transparent because the,
Yeah.
you need to be transparent in order for a customer to also mitigate these things. If they don't know, they don't know.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I kind of agree with everything you said, and especially this kind of thing is very big if we start to talk about cloud providers, especially, right? Because at least in my job, what I see is that most of the big companies out there are pretty much all into the cloud. Okay, just because it's much more simpler to build stuff if you have everything ready and mostly arranged by someone else. So that's big in that specific context, of course. At the same time, I don't feel that this specific shoe is done by any of those big providers, because otherwise the kind of amount of money they were going to ask were very, very much bigger, right, than what we can see here. But as you said, there could be some workarounds. It could be not that bad for cloud providers, just because they could, even think any other vulnerabilities that are not discovered yet. I can just put some kind of workaround like that, and basically fix the issue. In any case, of course, if you don't find another vulnerability in their workaround, and so on and so forth. Um, on the other thing, I see a comment in there from Fabio that I'm just pushing in there, and of course, there are the middle companies, right? Not the consumers, not the very big cloud providers, but also someone in the middle who has to, maybe they cannot use the cloud services because there are a list of different uh, you know um, uh, industries which cannot really use cloud services for privacy related things, or other stuff as well. and they have to build still their own data centers. In that case, could be a little more trickier because you don't have the same resources like Microsoft or AWS or Google have. So it's difficult to find the best answer to everything. But that's
Yeah,
also the good thing with good questions, in my
yeah,
point of view, right? It's
yeah,
definitely a good discussion to have. That's
yeah.
my
I
final
would
thoughts.
also, I also feel like a little bit maybe the cloud providers are also responsible because they understand how they run their cloud data centers. So if like Microsoft or Azure or Google Cloud or so or AWS once vulnerabilities released, and I believe they somewhat do this now that I just talk about it. I think I remember seeing that they will say whether their cloud platform is affected by this.
Mhm.
And so it would be really interesting, but also to hear about, how do they mitigate it? Why are they not affected by this? What is their architectural decision? How they set everything up that this doesn't cause an issue? And then maybe a smaller company, a smaller um, data center, or a company that just has some servers in their office or something like this. Like, is there something they can do or would need to or could do or something? But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. In that case, you are actually making them also responsible in some way for something that another company is actually doing. That I understand the reasoning, the overall reasoning, but it starts to be a little tricky because how many companies you actually make responsible of transparency in if you use the kind of reasoning. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Like it's difficult to reach something like that. It will be some, of course, because if everyone starts just to contribute for the overall community in that way, of course everyone will benefit from it. But I think it's a little bit too ideal, like something that we cannot really, unfortunately, reach, right? Um, but yeah, I don't know. Definitely a very good argument, definitely a very good discussion to have. And I'm curious to see whether how this thing will be will end, right? Because if we have some kind of conclusion from this class action, this will be like a precedent. Is that a word in English? I hope so. Like,
Yeah, but there's also, but I'm just googling this right now because for Meltdown Inspector that you mentioned before, Intel also got sued, and those were the big
oh,
first
okay.
vulnerabilities. And I was just wondering, actually, did we have like a result of that? And I'm just reading here a, an article from last year that Intel was not able to throw out the class action lawsuit about Spectre and Meltdown. But so I don't know if there in 2023 there have been more updates because I think that's a massive lawsuit that might drag out for a while. And I feel like we would have heard about the result if there were um, a result. And so, in some sense, maybe this lawsuit is an extension of that. Like they can either piggyback off the previous lawsuit, or the active
Yeah.
lawsuit can say, look, like if this goes through, then they have arguments for the other one. I'm just reading here also Apple won class action over Spectre and Meltdown, apparently. So apparently Apple did sue Intel because it was
Okay.
affecting Mac devices. Um, so yeah, it might be an interesting topic for if anybody of you is interested in digging this more into it. What it also means, like as you say,
Absolutely.
like a president. And of course, Intel is not the only one that is vulnerable to these kind of things. Whatever Intel will suffer kind of will affect the other CPU vendors as well. I'm sure they are not more secure or
No,
don't.
of course.
They
Yeah.
will have similar issues.
Yeah, absolutely. This is just the biggest company, and if you want to aim at something, you want to aim at the biggest target, right? No, that's very interesting. I actually really appreciate the fact that you mentioned to the people that are watching, if you want, you really should dig a little deeper. We don't have enough time to discuss everything we should and could discuss about this and all of the other topics we will chat about tonight. But what I'm going to do is to push into the chat the link to this article, and so you can read it yourself. You can dig a little deeper maybe, and if you want to share something, please do it, because that's the way. I'm doing this because I learned from it. I learned from Fabian in this at this very moment, but also from you people that push it back to me, all the things that I'm saying wrong, all the things that I should know before talking. um, so please do that. And if you don't know already, I'm actually going to re-upload the recording from this episode later on YouTube. So I will actually put it in the description, all of the articles we're going to talk about. Okay, so you can do your own research and just not take what we say for granted, right? Okay. But I think this is enough for this article. I think we have a lot still to talk about. So I'm going to push and move to the next one. Just before you do it, please, if you're watching this, if you're enjoying this, and if you want me to continue, invite other people like Fabian, maybe try to invite Fabian once again at some point. We will discuss about that later. Push that subscribe, follow, share, or whatever you have in front of you, because that's the only thing I'm asking you, the only thing that just let me know that this is appreciated and I should do more. Okay, so that's it. Let's move to the next one. And this other news is actually somewhat related to the previous one, right? I don't know. There's again a lot to talk about this, and maybe we will take a lot of things for granted. I really like to make things very easy for everyone watching this, so I'm going to try to explain every acronym or term we use. But essentially we are talking about the CVSS, or essentially it's a system to score how bad a vulnerability is, right? We already spoke about vulnerability the previous news, but also of course in all the previous episodes. And the big news here is that the first, basically the association or organization behind this scoring system, the CVSS, which is pretty, I think it's the standard of the, right? There's nothing like it. We are all using the same scoring system pretty much. I know there are some proprietary ones from some companies, but the most standardized one, I think, is the CVSS. So basically they pushed a new version, so the version 4 of CVSS, and put a list of different changes, a list of different updates to these current systems. But before we go deep on which kind of new updates were put, I want to talk a little about the scoring system in general. Like, why do we actually need a scoring system? Like for someone new in the industry, maybe someone wants to do bug bounty or penetration testing. You just want to search for a vulnerability. You want to find the vulnerability so that you can say, okay, I got in because I found the hole in the defenses or something, right? But on the other end, the people who have to fix those vulnerabilities, to patch, to install the patches from the vendors, actually, in most companies have too many vulnerabilities to handle, right? So we, as an industry, we actually need a way to prioritize those thousands of vulnerabilities found in the environment, so you can choose which one to fix first, right? And I personally, had to handle that in my daily job some time ago, and it's a very very big challenge. And I don't think any company out there is really able 100% to handle everything. And it's difficult, it's confusing. There are so many vulnerabilities, so many new vulnerabilities out there every day also. Even just discovering which one do you have in your environment is difficult. And if you also have to decide which one to fix and which one maybe to push it for later, it's a very big thing. But I don't know. Do you see that as well? Do you think this is something that actually helps, having a scoring system, or not?
Oh yeah, I don't even know where I should start with this one. So I have to make a few points. First of all,
Mhm.
I personally have never really used CVSS ever.
Okay.
So that should prefix everything that I'm saying, because I
Okay.
speak with absolutely zero experience.
That's okay.
However, I do have judgmental opinions about it, and so you should keep in mind that I really don't have like much experience with it. So I am very well aware that I could be very wrong with some of my opinions. But I guess also what I would like to prefix before I say anything is that I generally agree with you. This that it's very difficult for a large organization to manage their vulnerabilities and to prioritize what to fix. And for that, I fully agree. We need somehow measurable and comparable scoring systems for risk or so. Um, I have never been in that position. I have personally no experience in that type of work, and so you mentioned that you have some experience. Maybe you can share some more details how that helped you in that case. But luckily, I've never been like in that position to deal with it. My experience with severity ratings is always from the position of somebody who finds vulnerabilities, and I report them to clients. And when so I work in a team doing code audits and looking for vulnerabilities in the application of clients. uh, we generally have our own severity rating, and we deliberately have it very simple. There's just informational, low, medium, high, and critical. And how do we decide what we assign to a vulnerability? Feeling. It's literally that's how we do it. Um, because so yeah, I don't know. So what? Maybe first of all, maybe you could share with people like what is the problem with my feelings based
Okay.
approach to vulnerability
Uh,
severity.
I don't know. You're not the first one that says something like that to me, right? I knew some other people, like some other, especially pen testers, right there, right, that just think that CVSS is it's too much complicated or just not helpful, and they find their own way to measure. Okay, this is the worst one, right? And you should fix this first. But this is mostly, or at least in my experience, a metric for the things you find in a single report, right? So you do your own penetration testing activity, you find, I don't know, 10 vulnerabilities, I'm just guessing that, right? And you put a metric to tell your customer, okay, from these 10 vulnerabilities that I found, this is the worst one, just fix this first, then this one, and so on and so forth, right? And that is completely fine. I think that's actually very appreciable from penetration testing, especially if you are a contractor or individual person that you um, you work with during that activity, and maybe you don't hear from him from for months, or maybe more later, because at least that single report should be as effective as possible, as usable as possible, just the day after you do the activity. So that's great. But later on, the same person who received the report receive a lot of other reports from a lot of other penetration testers, or maybe they also run their own vulnerability scans in their network, and they find another 100 or maybe 1,000 of other vulnerabilities, and they have to fix all of this together, right? Or again, this is for large companies, this is from my experience, and most of the time that's what I see. uh, I need, as a, I don't know how they call it, like a vulnerability manager or something. I don't know what's the role, but I need something to measure everything in my environment and get a clearer view as possible. And I understand that's very difficult. I'm the first person saying that we don't have the key still, but that's what we're searching for, I think. And it's cannot be that simple when you have 1,000 vulnerability
Yeah.
instead of just 10 of them. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I and from this for me, it's like a more like a theoretical standpoint. I agree. If we would have to be, or if we are able to assign an objective number that tells us, that helps us to prioritize issues, that is useful. But and this is where I think, and this is, I'm so sorry, like my lack of experience might be showing here. So if I'm wrong, I'm not speaking here from
I think these
experience.
are
This
these
is,
are just different point of
yeah,
views. It's not lack of
yeah,
experience.
yeah.
That's okay. That's completely okay.
There are so many, like, if you like, I have done CVSS like once or twice in my career, because like a customer deliberately requested, please, severities based on CVSS
Okay.
scoring. But then I have not used it before. Like, I did not read, I don't know, the hundreds of pages of documentation and definitions how to define
Right.
certain words. And then now you're sitting there and you try to figure out what is applicable and affecting your score. And then um, this is just an example from the top of my mind. There are things like the rating is, for example, influenced by whether there exists a public exploit or it's being
Yeah.
or not. So
Mhm.
right now, with that question, think about it. Let's make a context. I find a vulnerability and report it to the customer. I
Mhm.
have obviously, for this vulnerability, create, like, it's known now to me how this vulnerability works. I have a script. So
Yeah.
for the CVSS rating, do I say there exists a public, or there exists like a proof of concept exploit or not? Probably not, because the company paid for it and I just shared it, and of course I'm bound by NDAs. I will not share it publicly.
Mhm.
But uh, again, like, you start, and this just it might not be have been the best example, but I'm just saying there are tons and tons of these where you're unsure about the definitions and when what to choose. And then the score somewhat becomes arbitrary. Like, it goes up by a point or maybe even 2 points depending on what you
Mhm.
click on the scoring. And maybe if like 10 people do it, we get a nice average. But then again, I feel like we're getting back to low, medium, high. Like,
Yeah.
then maybe like a fuzzy setting like this is like good enough. And that's what we always thought. We thought it's good enough. We understand the client's application, and in the context of this application, we feel like this is a critical, and we feel like this
Yeah.
is a high. And that is, I think, like, we don't really need to compare it, I believe, to like a vulnerability found in a completely entirely different system, because in the end you give that report to the developers responsible for that page, like that developer group does not have to care about whatever other product with issues had. Like, do we really need a company-wide like scoring system to compare it? Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I mean, that could be true. It really depends on the organizational structure inside a company. So it's gonna be different depending on which company we are talking about. You could have your situation where you just speak with the system owner, which is worrying just for their system, and they will handle just your vulnerabilities. So in that scenario, you are probably completely right. At the same time, what I would, I'm not actually a penetration tester myself, right? So I don't have that experience. But what I would probably suggest is for those penetration testers right there to use, you know, maybe your own metric that is most of the time more effective. I'm sure about that. But at the same time, if you can also, try to use in case you need it, right? This will be the CVSS score. That will be probably useful in some contexts. And I also understand what you said before. Like, it's difficult sometimes to actually give the right score with CVSS. But as far as I know, there are it's getting also more complicated with the new version here. But the point is that you have a base score which just tells you how bad is the vulnerability itself. Like, if this could be exploited remotely, or if you need user credentials, or if it enables you to run code, or it enables you to do something else. So that is something I think you can actually score by yourself. Probably all of the additional scores it's something that is too complicated. Like, as you said, is there an exploit available? Is this actively exploited in the wild? It's something that just you cannot know, out of the blue, from just a pen test, right? So probably you can give a piece of it, which is the base score, in my point of view. And for the rest, of course, it's a little too complicated just for you as a penetration tester. The new version actually gives other additional scores related to, if this affects maybe an OT device, so something operational, something that maybe, it's actually enabling a robot to move, something that it can actually affect potentially, um, the physical life out there. It can be actually harmful in a physical way, so that actually can increase the score. That, like, the other problem that I see is that the score, every new version of the scoring system, it gives more possibilities to increase the score, right? I don't feel like we give enough possibilities to lower the score, always to increase it. So that will always end up with more critical vulnerabilities inside my, never-ending list of vulnerabilities in my environment. So the problem is, when I have 1,000 of vulnerabilities and 100 of them are critical, I still have a problem, right? I understand we need to prioritize that medium vulnerability that could cause, harm to actually humans out there. And that medium is not a medium anymore. It's going to be high or critical because of that. But at the same time, still I have an issue in understanding, okay, which vulnerability I actually have to prioritize first. Okay, I feel that that's our own problem here.
Yeah.
I don't know if anything that makes sense of that.
No, yeah. I and then that's what I find so difficult, because now the scores are changing a lot because of all these additional factors. But on the other hand, I understand it's important. Like, if you do risk assessment and you want to assess like really the risk for your business, then there are lots of factors that affect the risk. Also, like like this, that's the other thing. Maybe have you ever like done node development, like JavaScript development, and installed some npm modules? If you install some npm modules and you run npm audit, then it gives you like 100 of critical vulnerabilities in the npm packages. Like, these are critical, but 99% of them, or 99.9% of them, are not applicable to you. So even though they are critical, they are a zero, because they are just like, they have zero, like you don't, not interfacing with that vulnerability at all. So there's a critical vulnerability in a dependency, but that has zero effect on you. Like, who is tracking this? Like, who is responsible for realizing that in your npm packages, and that's a whole issue with scanners in general. Like, maybe the reason why these companies have too much to fix is because they run some weird scanners that report on some dependencies that have zero impact on your business anyway, and now you're sitting there going through list of criticals that have absolutely no effect on you. On top of it, now I'm getting in rage mode. We have lots of CVEs that are invalid, that are simply invalid and fake or made up, or a person misunderstood it, or I don't know what the problem was. But then scanners reporting on those, maybe, and our company invest resources to fixing it. I don't know. Like, I don't know how to. But that's the problem. Is like, this is my privileged view of a pen from like somebody looking for vulnerabilities. I have never been in that situation to actually manage the risk for business. So these are all just assumptions, and I might make very.
I just think it's definitely too complex as as a thing to do, right? You're definitely right. It's not that simple to just give a score. It's easy to say, okay, this is critical, but the point is, this is not enough. At the same time, again, I don't know the answer, which, how can we fix that? But yeah, like, I still appreciate the fact that we are trying to improve. If there's a new version, it's because they actually, realized something was wrong with the previous version. Of course, we will have a series of issues with this one as well, but still, if there's some, development, I think, and I hope at least that we will be a little more, um, you know just helped by this new score. Something that I found actually interesting is the fact that apparently there's an additional metric to measure whether that vulnerability as a consequence impacts other software as well. Like if you have a vulnerability for a very common dependency for a lot of softwares, right? I don't know. I'm thinking about we had Log4j some time ago, right? Something that was everywhere. Okay, it was a very tiny piece of code, but it was basically everywhere, right? And just the fact that that piece of code is everywhere, it makes it more critical because of that. Log4j was big at the time just because everyone was using it, also without really knowing it, right? So that specific thing, I think it's very useful, and maybe I think definitely that's something that a vulnerability manager should rely on, because if you cannot afford to fix everything, definitely try to make those few patches, those few moves that cover the most part of your environment, because the the final goal is actually to reduce your security surface, your attack surface, because we cannot fix everything. We know you will never reach zero vulnerabilities in your environment, but still, if you can
Yeah. Th-
do,
I find this
I don't
interesting.
know, 10 patches.
Yeah, I really need to interject
Go,
because
go, go, go.
this is an experience I just don't have. Like I never had. I do not understand, and I cannot believe that this is really that it is this way. That we apparently have vulnerabilities that we cannot fix all of them. Like I if anybody of you listening out there is working in exactly such a place, can I intern with you like for like a week or so and understand this, because I cannot comprehend how that is possible and how this could not be like properly dealt with, and then like how makes no sense to me. Like I hear this, you are not the only person
No.
saying that. I've heard this many
Okay.
times, but I just cannot comprehend that this is a reality, and I want to see it. Like I would like to have this experience myself.
I will just give you my personal opinion why, and this is just personal, of course, on why that is true. And the reason why is this one. Most of the time, as a penetration tester, I think you are talking with people actively developing a system. Okay, we are in the process of pushing updates every week or so, and of course, if I get a report with 10 vulnerabilities or 5 vulnerabilities, I can do that. I physically can do that, right? Because I'm working on it. I have, I don't know, 10 developers working on that, and they are just waiting for the new tasks to implement. So definitely they can do it. The problem is that the very, very big companies, I don't know, a very big bank or something like that, has so many systems out there, and at least 70 to 80% of them are not really actively handled by anyone. They are just there. Okay,
Hmm.
and
That's a good
all of
point.
the effort
Yeah.
of the developers, they are working on the very 20% of the new software for the new features or the new applications, or those systems that get audited for some regulations or something. All the rest is there waiting for
Very
the
good point.
audit
Very good
of
point.
next year, right?
Yeah.
And if you
I
had
can totally see this
no,
happening. Yeah. It makes sense. That's a good point.
that's
Yeah. Thank you
my
for
point
sharing
of
that.
view.
That makes sense. No, that makes total sense. Yeah.
But
As
again,
soon as you
I
have a
think
large
that's just
company, yeah. Sorry.
that's just a consequence of having a big company, right? Of course,
Mm,
smaller companies with less number of systems, and it's much more easy. Maybe you don't have the resource, maybe you don't have 10 developers, maybe you have just one developer working on
mm,
3 systems, and then
mm.
gets a little complicated, but of course it's different. Okay. Hopefully that was helpful and interesting for someone. I see some comments coming there also from LinkedIn. By the way, we are actually, this is the first time, but we're live on Twitch, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and apparently everything is working, which is kind of surprising. But that's kind of cool. So I see a comment there that could be interesting. So Andre is saying as Log4j and the Spring4Shell also, whereas still are two of the major vulnerabilities which have generated thousands of finding. Okay, but I think you're right. But at the same time, I think that's true just because again that piece of code was used everywhere. Like that was something that was useful for so many software out there that just everyone was downloading the library and pushing it in their own system, right? It's just a consequence on how development today is, right? If
Yeah.
everyone is downloading the same piece of code, of course the vulnerability will be everywhere, right?
Yeah.
um,
I have a little anecdote or like my experience being at Pentester about Log4j, which might be
mm,
interesting to
mm,
hear. Uh,
yeah.
I have not found Log4j once in a client project. You would think that it's everywhere.
Oh,
I would find it.
okay.
And I tell you why I don't find it, because that has also a very easy explanation. And that might also be the reason why I don't understand CVSS and all the issues
Okay,
we just
okay.
talked about. It is because we are a fairly small team, and we deliberately don't want large customers like banks and big enterprises because they are
Mm,
very difficult to work with lots of
okay.
documentation, regulations, and just a lot of paper pushing. And so most of our clients are actually small companies and startups. And
Mm,
startups usually don't start developing, like if a startup develops nowadays a web app, like starting today, nobody chooses Java. They
yeah.
they all are building on Go or Node.js or other stuff. So
Yeah.
the I have seen, like, over my 10 years doing pen testing, I've seen this evolution of technologies, like always the new technologies and the startups then choosing these new technologies. And that has led to the case where I very, very rarely get to test enterprise Java web applications. It does happen, of course, and then of course we I check for something like for J, but I couldn't even tell you when the last Java test was. It's like it's maybe it's like once a year tops, maybe once every 2 years or so. So it's very rarely that we get it, and I think that's kind of interesting to hear because most people obviously work in large corporations, I guess, and most pen testers probably have experience pen testing large corporations because usually the pen testing companies have incentives to have large projects and large like for a company it's obviously easier to acquire 100 days contract versus 10 companies 10 days projects, right? As a company paying salaries to pen testers, you won't have huge engagements contracts going multiple years or so. So that's why most pen testers often test like these enterprise stuff, and then log4j and I don't know, all these other Java issues are something that they will have to deal with all the time. But yeah, for me, I live in this weird bubble of the new technologies all the time, and so I unfortunately I never encountered Log4j.
I think you're actually lucky, but I think that's just my point of view. Anyway, it is very interesting. It is very interesting. Like you make it clear how different contexts, like the very small startups and the very big companies out there, just use different, um, how do you say, like,
Technologies
yeah,
or
they
solutions.
just have different start points, right? If they use different technologies, they have a completely different set of vulnerabilities. Maybe they don't have a list of very old vulnerabilities because of that, and that's a good thing. But of course, a big company cannot just you know
No, of course, yeah,
erase everything they have and start from scratch,
absolutely,
right?
yeah.
Just too expensive. But very, very, very interesting. But I will continue like this forever. But unfortunately, we are already late on my on my plan, and we have a lot to discuss about. So we need to stop here and continue with the next news. I say hi again to all the people that are writing in the chat and are joining us. I very, very appreciate all of you, and please continue using that chat to comment and ask questions and say how wrong I was in my last sentence. That's appreciated, by the way. And once again, just want to remember everyone, if you're enjoying this, if you like the discussion, if you like saying to me how wrong I was, please consider hitting the like, share, subscribe, follow button, just because it's very, very helpful, and just let me know that I should continue to do this and invite cool people like Fabian together with me. That said, we should continue to the next news, which is maybe a little no, definitely different from the previous one, right? So we changed topic. We stopped talking about vulnerabilities, at least for a little bit. And this time, I actually like taking this kind of news right here, where basically you have some kind of operation from agencies, government agencies, or police from all over the world, actually catching the bad guys, right? Because I really think, and I want your opinion on this, that most people interested in the industry, that are not yet in the industry but are looking to join the industry, are really fascinated by the thing, the hacker from with the hoodie that does all of this bad stuff without being catched, just because you're too good at it, and all of the companies out there are completely bad. They don't know how to do their work and everything. And I just like to remember, sometime, that still, if you do it illegally, this is still bad stuff. This is still illegal, and still, you can be catched. And when you are catched, it's not very nice, right? Something bad can definitely happen. And why just don't do it legally and being paid for it? And I just don't see the value in that. So if you are just thinking about that, consider this little suggestion of mine. Are classes required in cyber? They are asking. I don't know. Maybe it could be.
I mean, for me, it's a new addition. I've been wearing them for like a year or maybe 2 years tops. So I guess if
Definitely
you're
not.
getting old, then they are required.
Oh, come on! Are you saying I'm old as well? I had this from when I was 11 or something. So.
You aren't old, so well.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, no, that's not
Yeah.
required. You just feel very, very much cooler when you
It's
have them.
interesting.
So.
Mm. It's interesting what you said about why not do it legally, because the specific article you have been sharing here about that, where the law enforcement took down a phishing as a service provider. So they were basically taking down the people that, or I guess the crime organization that was running this phishing as a service. And at this point, it's not really a hacking operation. It's really a web engineering operation, because it's literally
Mhm.
phishing as a service is nothing. It's just software as a service. It's another SaaS product that they have been
Yeah.
developing. It's literally the same from a technological perspective, the same as like a WordPress like hosting service, like get your own WordPress blog, or write your own blog or something. Just in this case, the website displayed was a phishing website, but in principle it's exactly the same technology. I guess more profitable, because apparently they were celebrating quite lavishly with the money earned from this. But what I'm saying is, like, there's like no crazy hoodie people here. These are web developers basically, and the skills needed and used here are essentially web engineering,
Yeah.
administration, operations, that kind of skill level.
Yeah, not only that, I think they're, most of them are actually entrepreneurs, right?
Hmm. Mhm.
This was a company, right? No, not
Yeah, yeah.
exactly, a proper one, or just the one we usually think about. But we mentioned this very often during this podcast, the fact that cybercrime out there, it's now, at least in, I think, in the 10-15 years, developed in proper companies, completely, in any aspect, right? um, they have customer care, they have developers, they have people who are just running the business, on a high level, people who are just, discussing with customers to convince them to buy and everything. So the point is exactly what you said. Maybe it's not hacking, maybe it's not, maybe you could do the comparison with the very bad guy, a hacker from the movie, and a penetration tester that just gets paid legally from it. Okay, and just that's just the single person. But when you develop from a single, let's say, consultant doing penetration tests to someone who just build I don't know, just to make an example, a vulnerability scanner, just because you can scale up your business and just sell a piece of software to 1,000 customer instead of just running penetration tests one by one. That's the exact same thing with something like phishing as a service, which, by the way, if that's not clear yet, phishing is just let's say a technique in order to convince someone to click on a link or download a software from a phishing email or a phishing website with basically some fake thing disguised as something else, usually a legitimate thing, just do on a on a bigger scale, where you just prepare the phishing kits, they call it. Basically, the website is already ready to be used. You just have to pay them on their platform, retrieve everything you need as a software, and just push it to your let's say targets, right? um, but that's completely, all of those people working behind the scenes on this kind of phishing as a service platform, they could have been working on, I don't know, the next Spotify or the next, I don't know, the next thing that was just potentially do money legally, right? Okay, maybe it's a little more complicated because you have to comply with a lot of stuff and so on and so forth. But why why do we need to take the risk? I just don't understand that. Just because you like to be the bad guy, if you're a web developer, you have a lot of work out there just looking for you, and you decide, so for some reason, I know that this is actually more difficult than that, right? You maybe are in a certain context that push you into something sketchy instead of the right thing. It could be a little more complicated, but if you're thinking about it, if you have some sketchy idea, you can do a lot of money also, with just a proper company without doing illegal and stuff. But again, could be a little naive for me, just what I usually think about this kind of stuff. um so yeah, I don't know if that again made sense, but I like to say that, and so far no one say to me, no, you're stupid, you're saying something completely stupid. So I'll keep saying it for now. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, they are entrepreneurial spirit. They identified a market gap or whatever the terms are.
Yeah.
They could have built the next, like Squarespace making websites available to people without HTML programming experience. This phishing as a service kit made phishing available to people that have no web development experience to set up their own phishing. It's they identified what's it called? The market gap, is
A
that
need,
the term?
there was a need
Yeah, yeah.
in the market, and they just feel
Mm,
the need, right?
mm. And what I also find interesting, I guess it's obvious, but sometimes it makes me sad. Uh, the police raided here a business or a cybercrime operations that was nothing special in that sense, right? It's just
Okay.
phishing. It just made phishing available. It made just phishing more accessible to
Mm-hmm.
regular people that have no technical ability. So there's no secret knowledge. They had no crazy vulnerabilities. Like there was nothing. I don't know. Like sometimes I feel like if the police has to take somebody down, it's like they like crazy people or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
something technically like really cool, but it's not. It's like pretty almost boring. It's but showing that that is what cybercrime looks like.
Yeah.
Like this is just by making phishing more accessible, you increase the amount of crime that is being committed with that, and that's why the police took it down. By taking them down, you're not taking away uh, inaccessible technology. Like theoretically, you can still learn web development and set up your own phishing stuff. That is not the problem. You are just making, but you are making it less accessible, effectively less accessible, and apparently that's worth it for yeah, to take down. And apparently it has big impact because it was citing here also some reports about that there were high volumes of phishing attacks because of that site.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting point, and I was thinking about it. Like, yeah, it is true that usually, like, if you just go, you know, in a pub and just, you know, drop the word cybercrime, it looks very, very fancy. You know, you think about this very advanced guy that should be geniuses, you know, in computer science or something. Whether it's actually, I think, most of the time different, right? Most of the time the thing is to make it much more simple for anyone to attack and to breach in organization defenses. And the point here is that it's not only that, it's not only the people who cannot do it themselves, right? It's only the fact that, you know, you have this phishing as a service, you have the ransomware as a service organizations, you have everything else basically as a service right now. And the point is that maybe you are focusing on something else. Maybe you are building the ransomware thing, so the very bad thing, and you just need the you know, the initial access. You know, an attacker actually has to do a list of different steps in order to carry out the attack and to reach out their goals, right? And most of the time, the most crucial thing, the most important thing is actually get that first step hold inside the network of the organization. And so far, you know, phishing is always being the best way to do it, right? Because, you know, humans are just unfortunately simpler
Mm.
to attack than systems, the computers. And maybe you are working on the rest of the attack, and you are just buying the initial access from them just because they do it effectively, right? Or maybe, you know, this actually, this organization right here, they were actually selling also just the credentials they were gathering. So maybe instead of the actual phishing kits, you are just buying the credentials you need to access that specific network, and then you do the rest, right? The point is that you're just making it simpler. You're just making other bad and criminal organizations outsource a part of their work so they can be faster, they can be more effective. You are just making the overall crime machine smoother and more effective, right? That's, you know, it's a completely parallel world than the one we are actually you know, living right now, but with a set of different rules. So
Yeah. And you know what? You could have this all legally because there are companies that basically sell that as a service to law enforcement and other government agencies. You know, the um, uh, government malware and hacking stuff. These are often also external companies that are just being paid. They acquire vulnerabilities from researchers as well. Like most publicly, I guess, Rhodium with their buying list. Like, why are they buying these
yeah, yeah,
vulnerabilities? Of course, they are using it, or they sell them again to other companies that then develop the malware, develop the malware interface and kit to be then used in engagements and stuff, just legally with more regulations, I assume. Um, but yeah, the kind of the same kind of work also exists in a legal setting. I guess the one
yeah,
company pays taxes and the other one doesn't, and I guess that's the issue.
yeah. That's most of the time, you know, the big differentiation, right? So, you know, this is completely a very interesting, you know, discussion to have. But again, we probably cannot save all of the people that are ready into those contexts, but everyone who are you know, just developing their skills and thinking about a career, you know, you have a good career also in the legit, you know, business. So just make a thought about it. um So going a little back to the news itself, just wanted to see what else we didn't mention. So we actually had an interesting thing is actually that, this operation by the police, actually there's the FBI and their Australian Federal Police and so on and so forth. It's eventually affected some people in some Malaysian people, right? Were actually arrested, and apparently, I think 1 year before, there was like this report from an individual researcher. We actually found about some people in Malaysia who were allegedly behind this kind of service. So it's interesting to see how the I think they relied at least a little bit on that research as well, right? Of course, they, police and agencies did their own research, but the fact that someone out there do some, how do you call it? Just some open research just because you want to, just because maybe you want to help overall the community, can be also helpful for something like that, can be also helpful in actually catching the bad guys. I think that's very cool. I think that's something that, you know uh, there's a reason why, if you can, maybe you should do it, right? Maybe you're
Mm.
not in the police, maybe you're not into any of those agencies, but if you have the skills, and if you have the possibility, or also the time, of course, to do some kind of research like that, not only, of course, shows to the world your skills, and maybe can be helpful for your next job or something, but it can actually be helpful in something like this, right?
Yeah,
Of course,
if you
this
are
is not a
interested,
suggestion. Yeah.
yeah, if you are interested
uh,
in doxing people and this is fun to you, then maybe do it to more bad people.
yeah. I mean, we should also mention that probably, this also expose yourself, right? So also
Right.
think twice
Whether
before you do something like
they might
this.
be retaliate.
Yeah, but I think it's actually cool. I think, oh yeah, here it is. So a cybersecurity expert, Gabor, I'm not going to pronounce that, but Zatmari, detailed in a three-part series of open source intelligence research how he linked with the high confidence the operator to Malaysian, living a life of luxury. So apparently he was at least, partly right, and I think that's eventually pretty cool. And again, thanks to that researcher for its work, if eventually was helpful for something like that, right? Um, so what else I wanted to mention about this? Yeah, apart from the platform itself, I don't know if anyone can see the screenshots from the articles, but apparently it was a pretty cool software as well, right?
Mhm.
Uh,
It looks actually very similar. I made a video a while ago about I forgot what the exact title was, but it was basically about a Steam phishing as a service platform.
okay.
Somebody who um, was kind of like involved in kind of like tracking and reporting these Steam phishing domains.
Okay.
Um, he got access to one of these groups and one of these phishing interface and was able to record like how to use it, and we were experimenting with it a little bit. I included those videos in I included that footage in a video of mine. It says something about like hacking is not phishing, or so is the title of the video. But
Okay.
it looks, if you watch the video, it basically, if you scroll down a little bit, the where you select the template for the phishing
Yeah.
page, that's exactly how it also looked like. In that particular case, it was just like all Steam phishing pages, and it had like different ways to try to trick you into Steam phishing. It's also kind of like interesting from a scientific standpoint, because uh, if you are the site operator, you
Hmm.
actually get really valuable data on which template performs the best, and who I think that kind of data would be really useful for in terms of also defense, like how, like what are the most phishing templates that are just like working the best. There are lots
Yeah.
of small settings also you can usually make, like how the phishing login works, like redirect the way to Wikipedia, have it like a
Yeah.
fake pop-up, like I don't know, there are lots of different ways. And so I would be so curious to see like some scientific analysis of which and why
Mhm.
phishing templates work better than others. I think that would be kind of interesting.
Well, I don't think we're going to see any of that, but the police actually seized some or all of their infrastructure, right? Servers
Yeah,
and
they have the
everything
data
there.
for sure.
Yeah, they have the data, and I definitely think they're going to analyze the data also to understand a little more, but possibly to catch more people that were involved in, you know, not only in running the business here, but also in buying those services to then perpetrate the attacks, right? Because also, of course, that is illegal. And they now have a lot of data, and every time they see something like this, they collect a lot of data that can be then helpful to understand a lot of things. And I agree, it will be very, very interesting to see the result of those analysis and investigations. But at the same time, I don't think we most of the time, at least, we will ever going to see any like that. um, just before we move on, I see here that there were actually some mentions of some of the templates you were mentioning before, right? And here you can see Microsoft Office, of course, DHL, Naver, apparently a Korea-based online platform, and American Express, Bank of America. Of course, banking and finance are very big in there. Of course, you can directly go at people's money. So that definitely makes sense. And another thing that I thought it was interesting, it's that it's mentioned here that they also provided um, some way to basically fool and work around multi-factor authentication, right? Because some time ago, at least when you were learning, especially online on open sources, you will always see something like, okay, phishing is not a thing anymore because now we have multi-factor authentication, and if you enable that, that's not effective anymore. But actually, I don't know if you ever spoke in one of your videos about Evil Engine X, and it's actually I don't know, a little worrying how easy it is, to deploy something like that, and also get the one-time code to use in the multi-factor authentication. And of course, that's an open source software, and of course, open source software is also used by bad guys as well, which is something we're going to mention in the next news. So yeah, I think it's useful to be aware that something like this is being sold, out there, right? You have to know what's on the other side, let's say. Okay. Think it's the right time to go to the very last news for today. I'm sorry if we are a little late, and hopefully that's not a problem for you, Fabian.
Not at all.
um, Perfect. One last time, again, I know I see some people still watching, so that's very cool. Thanks everyone, and thanks also to the people that are commenting in the chat. If you're appreciating this, please consider, you're watching this on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch. You have a little button in front of you to follow, subscribe, and everything. Consider do that. If no, just at least to receive the notification for the next video, right? Because if you like this, maybe you will like the next one as well. But yeah, that's it. Let's move to the very last one for tonight. Unfortunately, I will say, because I'm enjoying this, and this is a very different thing compared to anything else I actually took to any other episodes. Okay, but I think there's something interesting to talk about this. So I'll try to introduce the article, but it's actually very big. And again, I'm going to drop the link in the chat, in the description of the YouTube video once I re-upload it. so you can actually read it yourself, because I think it's very, very interesting. And by the way, I actually find most of the time very interesting any article by Andy Greenberg. So thanks, Andy, and maybe ever read that his other articles. So the thing here, we are talking about I don't know, how do you call it, like an organization for animal rights, okay, which are apparently very well known because of their aggressiveness in let's say attacking those companies who are handling animals in any way. And they of course are being sued every now and then for all of their intrusions, also physical intrusions in organizations buildings, to capture data, to capture photos, videos, to share, and do damages, or just let's say steal the animals to make them escape. The real point that interests us in our context is the fact that recently they shared a sort of manual, right, of all of their organization, all of their um, tips and tricks in order to run this kind of intrusions they do, for the reason they do it, right? They mention specific technologies they use, they mention specific tactics to use, and it's actually very detailed, and very well done, right? It's something that really apparently can be if you don't know the context, could be like a manual from agency government, a government agency, from some spies or something, right? Because it's very, very advanced, and it actually explains why they are very effective in what they do. So there's a lot shared in this manual, as I said. The only thing that apparently was not written in there was the actual physical intrusion part. That's the only thing they thought, okay, this is a little too much to share openly on the internet. But anything else, like how to um, find the best spot to enter a building, or how to identify people, like with thermal vision or night vision technology, and fake uh, fake cameras, like hidden cameras that you can disguise somewhere to collect videos, and so on and so forth. Now the thing is, and I want this to be as open as possible as a discussion, because of course this is a very specific context, but I think we can translate this to anything else. Like, is it okay to share this kind of techniques and tactics openly to anyone in the internet that can actually read it, right? I don't know if that already
Yeah.
makes sense, right? Because I have a lot in my mind, but I don't want to
Yeah.
push.
I mean, for me, it's a very simple answer. Yes, I'm very much in favor in general of information
Okay.
being public. And I'm also like, for example, also about vulnerabilities and details of vulnerabilities, I'm leaning more towards like full disclosure. I understand like the importance of responsible disclosure, and generally I think that's the way to go. But like I don't think that full disclosure is that bad, to be honest. And so similar with here, information public. I do have some nuanced opinions about. I actually made also a video about this a while back about like what is allowed on YouTube or not, which is kind of like similar about hacking tutorials, sharing them on YouTube. And actually, made an argument that I still stand by, that the context where the information is presented is kind of important. For example, I do think that a phishing tutorial on YouTube is kind of bad in terms of like how to set up a basic phishing page. Essentially, imagine a video where I just show people how to use the phishing service that we just seen before. That will just increase crime and is not educational and does not really teach hacking knowledge, because it's just a crime tutorial at this point. And that's why I'm okay to not allow something like this on YouTube. However, as we also mentioned, a phishing page is just web development. So a web development tutorial, which teaches you exactly how to set up a phishing page, any web developer within the first like week of learning web development can set up a phishing page. That is not forbidden knowledge. Like that has its purpose on YouTube. So I think context of information and so forth matters in the way how it's presented. And so now the question for me is, in this, do I see this document as kind of like a just help crime, or is this more educational and provide like interesting information? And I think for me, very clearly, it's just like exploring ideas about their beliefs of what is operational security. It's not like in the end they are just highlighting risks. It's like not a tutorial like how to rob a bank. It's just like the, phones can be tracked. If you buy a burner phone, make sure you don't buy it with your credit card that is linked to your identity and so forth. Like it's just like these kind of ideas and thoughts, and I don't think that there's much harm done in that. They are very logical as well, kind of like everybody sitting down can kind of come up with them as well. It's, for me, it's like nothing too like severe in that sense. But yeah, curious. You said you have some thoughts about it. Do you think this is a problematic piece and should not be published?
Okay, so I don't have like a clear position about this stuff, right? I do have opinions on both sides, but I'll try to do the devil's advocate here. Like let me think about it. We mentioned this before, right? With the phishing stuff. Okay, it's not something difficult if you do know something about development and code writing. You can do it yourself, so it's not a big deal whether there's a phishing as a service out there, because you can do it on your own. Nope. The problem is that thing is enabling a lot of people who are not actually able to do this stuff on their own. Or suddenly you have like a shortcut, right, to reach that goal, just because someone who is capable just pushed something in the wild, right? So I'm thinking, I know that someone who is already capable, someone who knows already where to search for this stuff, because this is not anything new. All of these individual information are probably out there in the internet already, right? But here there's a manual where you have 80% of the things you need to enter any kind of organization out there. Okay.
We need to ask, however, how effective and how good is that even? Because they themselves are saying that they love to draw attention, that they love to get criminal charges
Yeah.
because they want attention. So how good is that document really? Is it maybe not just covering the basics? And if you actually commit crime, then you are still pretty much effed up. Like, is that knowledge in there? Like, for example, I'll give you an example. I would generally agree with you that a guidebook can be, but then it needs to be more detailed. Like you need to, for example, you could sit in front of an airport and note down every time the guards, like where are they walking, how many police are there, at what time, what are their rounds, when do they switch out, which are the dark corners that they are not watching, where are the cameras, like map all that, and then releasing that kind of information. That is like giving, like, I can understand that is taking away, like that is giving criminals or terrorists like an amazing like resource and basically a clear plan. But this document is so much more generic and general, might be applicable to your country, might not. There are even some information that is maybe like not even correct, or like some assumptions. For example, they assume things like everything you write will be intercepted or heard by the police. That's just an assumption.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
probably unlikely that the police is actually will be doing that, or like just was just I haven't read the whole document. I'm sure there are more examples, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I think it's a very broad document, and I don't feel like it's a very like actually like uh, um,
Okay. Like,
detail in that sense.
if I get your point correctly, the thing is, this is, let's say, pretty high level. It's not very specific about any, let's say, potential target. It's not like I don't know, it's not a data center, it's not a airport, it's not anything. They are just giving a bunch of high level suggestions, let's say. And if you think, if we think about that in this way, it's not too bad. Is this did I summarize it pretty
Yeah,
correctly, or okay? Okay, that might be true, but still going on the devil's advocate thing. um, what if this could be even worse? Just because it can be applicable to many different things, right? Whatever you want, basically. It could be even reused by as many different thieves or criminals out there targeting anything, not just airports, but
I
also
will.
all kind of things.
Yeah, I will even throw you a bone. Now that it's
Okay.
public, people could iterate over it. People like very
Right.
knowledgeable in certain areas can now give feedback and say, "Wait, this is not quite how it works. By the way, this would be better. It could be updated. It could be a crowdsourced a document being continuously updated and improved on." Also with like more sources and evidence, based on this court case, we know that this is the capability some peoples have, or but it could
Yeah,
be
yeah, yeah.
insane. So yeah, I
I see already a GitHub there with the versioning. You have the
exactly, exactly.
two
Yeah.
1.2, 1.3 version. No, but you get my point, right? Um, it could be definitely uh, interesting on a list of different aspects. At the same time, I still know that any of this is not new. Probably it's just the effort of taking all those information and put it together in a single piece of text. And the problem is that when someone very very naive, someone very very thinking about doing something crazy, uh, it's just as simple as downloading just a piece of paper, just a single PDF or whatever it is, to have most of the information you need to do something very very wrong. Right? I see that's the very problem in there. Of course, tomorrow we will not see thousands of different attempts to do something like this just because there's a single guide out there. But still, this is a step. I feel personally in the wrong direction mostly. Like, I think this is my opinion 60% of the time. And I will be, I want to make it make my statement worse. What if this is true also for all of the proofs of concepts out there, right? We have a lot of open source stuff that is EFSO. Okay, I love open source, but what when we actually give the weapons in our world? Exploits are the weapons. We came to the point where finding vulnerabilities is still okay, because that's the only way you can fix those vulnerabilities. So if we have open disclosure about a vulnerability, it's a thing, because then you are forced to fix that vulnerability, and this probably the only way you can enhance your security measures. But when you actually provide proofs of concepts just to show that you are capable of doing it, I'm saying this because at least some of those people sharing those proofs of concept are doing this to show their own skills, right? Um, I think that's actually harmful. I don't think it's a good thing for from the industry if you provide, the weapon to shoot at that specific hole in I don't know, in the armor of the organizations. And I feel this is something like that, potentially a little worse. This is kind of the metasploit, or I don't know. This is kind of I don't know, a toolkit. It's not a single exploit. It's a guide to use a list of different exploits for a list of different targets out there, right?
Mm.
And I do a very good connection with our world here, because I see out there that red teaming is maybe finally becoming a thing in the industry, right? We have people which are paid, right, to actually try to physically penetrate some organizations. And I know a bunch of people who will be very happy to gather this guide right here and, use most of those things for their own paid, activities. And if those people can do it and will do it, definitely some criminals can do that as well, right? Technically, we are simulating what we are trying to simulate what the bad guys are also doing. So if the good people are interested in it, I know for sure that also the bad guys will be interested in
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I hear what you are saying, but generally my position is like this. Generally, I want information to be freely accessible. I think we are not getting anywhere if we are hindering that flow of information. It, it's um, I- you somewhere draw a line, of course, and we somewhere have to draw a line, but we could. I mean, it's a bit exaggerated, but we could argue programming tutorials are bad because if more people learn programming, they will understand vulnerabilities. Or my whole
it.
channel is bad because I teach hacking to people. Um, Chemistry cannot be taught in school anymore because people will understand how chemical reactions work and are able to then make drugs or bombs. You cannot teach these things in university anymore because there's advanced chemistry level
Yeah.
information, so they will definitely be able to make drugs and bombs. I don't know. Like I feel like if we start like, and I don't want to. I use the word censoring lightly. I don't like to use that word much. But if we start censoring that kind
Mhm.
of information, I don't know. Like I agree, it will be effective, kind of like lowering, I guess, the probability that something will happen and that it will be not used as much. But generally speaking, I am all for spreading the information, but I
Mhm.
will always be convinced, like based on like some data. Like if we see like a small uptick, that is not worth hindering the flow of information. But when I think about, and this is my example with the YouTube tutorial about setting up a phishing page, if you make a video about programming, developing, then you are automatically building in like a barrier of somebody like having to deal with it. But if you just explain to them, go to this site, there's a phishing kit, pay $5, and here set it up, and you
Mhm.
can like fish all these accounts, then you get like a massive uptick in crime because you make it like more easily available. And I feel like we need to measure that somehow. And at some measure, like there's too much of a negative impact, and I understand to not allow it. For example, advanced drug making chemistry tutorials, maybe not the place on YouTube, but it's probably okay in a university setting just because it's automatically a little bit more isolated. But
Mhm.
overall, it's not forbidden. And but even, yeah, I don't know. Generally speaking, I'm always for more open information, and I feel like defenders have to just deal with that. I mean, this is a guide for law enforcement as well, right? We must not forget this. They are sharing all the details, how they are operating. That could make infiltrations into the group more easily, could make surveillance more easily, because now they have like exact book how they are doing it. They know what to expect. They know the technologies they are using. So um, the information is also getting, of course, to the defense, and so I don't know. I don't feel like a guide like this has massive, incredibly like awful, like great impacts. I'm sure it will be used by some activists and so forth, but to like improve maybe their operations. But it's not like something they wouldn't have done before. I don't think like this will create a mass of new groups just because of this, or thanks to this now going out and doing stuff.
Okay, I really wanted to do the devil's advocate, but you just convinced me. No, the fact is that I definitely agree with the fact that we need and we should, and definitely open, open information, open education is definitely important, right? I think I will not do what I do today without it, right? Because I don't have any formal, education or whatever you call it. And definitely what I am today, what I do today, it's thanks to all of those open source education out there, videos, guides, and whatever. So therefore I agree with you. And I think the point where the two different arguments meet in the middle is that it changes when you change the way you share the same information, right? Like the example you did was perfect. When you teach someone to program, like web development, and you teach, okay, let's do our very first web page, let's do something that looks like Facebook. Okay, if you do that in the context of a programming course, the reason and the purpose or of why you are sharing such information is still good. And I think you definitely should do it, just because it gives you an idea of, okay, I'm programming something that is actually real, that people out there are doing for money. Okay, the fact that I'm developing something that looks like Facebook gives me an idea of developing something real and useful, and not some random stuff without any sense, right? But if you do the same thing, you teach exactly the same thing, but you say, okay, this is the way you create a phishing page for Facebook with login and everything, you can steal credentials. Okay, you're teaching the same exact thing. Maybe you're sharing on the same platform, but it totally changes. I think everything, because just the thing that I can Google for how to build, a phishing page for Facebook instead of how to build a website. The reason why I'm finding that same information is different, and what I will do with that information later will be completely different, right? So I think the purpose and the meaning behind what you are sharing, completely changes everything. What I don't like about this kind of guide right here, it's because they are specifically sharing, okay, to do the same illegal stuff that we are doing, that's very bad, but you should do it because we are doing this for a better reason. I'm not judging. Like, of course, you could argue that this is a good point, like that you should do it because of animal rights and everything. But the point is that they are clearly saying, okay, all of everything you find in this guide is pretty much illegal. Here's how you can do it. I
Yeah,
think that's the bad thing, right?
I
On the
agree
other
with
side,
you. Yeah, so
yeah,
no, sorry.
just again, the same information are still out there already
Mm,
in other forms, and
no,
just maybe segregated, and you have to collect everything. But maybe it's good like that. It's good the fact that you are interested in those things. You are interested in, I don't know, video cameras, very tiny video cameras that can be put, I don't know, also for security
mm,
reason in your home, and maybe you want to do that kind of research. But the fact that
mm,
today I can search on Google how to enter a building without being noticed, I can find this guy.
mm.
That is the bad thing.
Yeah, I think in this specific case though, if it's really about like helping animal rights groups and or like they want other people to do the same, I
Yeah,
feel like they would create such a document and share it with each other, within the
exactly
community. They
right.
start circulating it. But the difference here is they make it really public. Like
Yeah,
the only reason why it's public is because they want to make it like a media stunt, and
yeah,
get again attention for their efforts. Um, so yeah, I'm not sure where I was going with this point. But you're right about the purpose thing. It's specifically calling for crime, and I understand that is like a little bit of an icky
yeah.
feeling, I guess, alongside it. But yeah, how do you feel about these tutorials how to break locks on YouTube? Do you know the lock picking
Mm,
lawyer?
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually, yeah, maybe I should not do say it openly, but no, I practiced like for fun some time ago. Again, I'm not sure. I think it's good for awareness. Like today, because I just documented myself on that thing, I know that most of those logs that you can find everywhere are not really secure. So if I want to secure one of my things, maybe I should look for something else. That's definitely the good part I see in that. I don't see a reason why anyone should, teach themselves how to lockpick. Of course, if you're not in red teaming and everything, right? If you're doing it for work and everything, but or maybe if you're actually someone who sells, and work with the locks in general, I think there's some value in that, but not so many people to justify open documentation or videos on how to do lock
Mm,
picking. But still, again, I think uh, that's one thing. That's one exploit to maybe one specific lock. Okay, it's not a complete guide on how to enter any door or any security thing, because if I want to break into a bank, I will not find the very cheap locks that they show in the lock picking videos. Okay, I will find something different. Okay, you can argue, you can see, I don't know how to exploit, the RFID cards or whatever, with some more advanced tool and everything. But again, you have to find the specific tool for the specific thing that you are going against, right? It's not something like a complete guide for everything. That's why I see it a little different. Maybe you are just passionate about something, maybe a little weird for the global
mm,
society. I don't know, I think we all are as an industry. But it is different, just because if you're teaching one single piece, it's not how to become a criminal. It's not how to breach a building or something. Yeah, okay, maybe you teach yourself how to open the door of your brother that wants you to stay away of their stuff, maybe. But it's not as bad as
yeah,
what they are teaching with something like this, right?
yeah, yeah. I generally, I'm like, again, very quickly we are starting to advocate for obscurity, just hiding
Mm,
some of the details, and to achieve security through that. I think logs are a great example because um, they, it's very difficult, if my understanding, to build like a very secure lock. There are always like weird things that it might be vulnerable against, and in the end it's just a physical thing. And so with enough force applied to it, you can just pop it open,
yeah,
it's like a hydraulic spreader or
yeah,
whatever, like kill the lock anytime. And then maybe you put the lock on there, but you have the screws for the hinges of the door that you can just unscrew, like, or you just bent open the metal door directly, or you know what, there was a window, let's just throw in the window. Like,
yeah,
there are so many ways, and I think in yeah, so like the information to obscurity and so forth, I don't know, like I find this a bit too lazy. I think let's I guess let's share information. Hope that humans are responsible, and
mm,
we charge the people that actually commit the crimes, and not the people who share the information about it. I'm totally okay for these animal rights people to be charged with trespassing. I think it's important for as much as I love the work that they are basically doing, but I'm also, and they know it themselves as well, that they do something illegal. That's part of the game, and it's important that we have these laws, and so forth. And so we charge those, but I don't think that they should be charged for sharing the kind of
yeah.
information. Yeah.
No, I completely understand. I just think that I'm again mostly agree with you with everything. I just think that somewhere there has to be a line, like where, okay, if you go over that, that's
And I
bad.
agree. But that line, I think, has to be informed by actual data. And
Mm,
why I bring up the phishing case is that I know, like that's a paper I like to cite a lot, because I happened to stumble over it once. It's about it's a paper by Google where they were looking at the reasons why Google accounts get compromised, and phishing kits are the major reason why Google accounts get compromised. So you have actual data on that the reason why accounts get hacked is because of phishing. So I think if you know that data and you know this is a real problem for my business, I think then it's totally fair for YouTube, for example, to block videos just straight up, very easily, step-by-step guide for phishing, just because the data is there. But like writing a buffer overflow exploit or so, like that is so obscure and niche,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
uh, that again, like there's no data to prove it. And I agree with you, there's a line somewhere, but I want this line to be informed with data and not on what some people feel the line should be. This line should be somehow informed through some data, and then I agree there's a line, but I want good reasons, and um, which generally makes my approach reactive. You know, maybe this document will actually cause a massive uptick, and then afterwards I say, yeah, okay, maybe you were right. That document should have not been public, but I feel like we have to kind of like accept that as like a general societal risk as humans, that this information maybe was bad, we didn't know it yet, and then afterwards, once we know what is where we should draw the line, then we will start draw the line then. But generally, if we are not good informed about or have like good data on it, we shouldn't like judge too quickly.
I think you completely, you said everything. Okay, I don't have really nothing to add to that. Completely agree, and yeah, that's just true. The fact that the line is moving, is dynamic, is something that the more you discover, the more you understand, you teach yourself, the more that line starts to be not really clear, and definitely it's just more effective to understand what is actually what is actually causing damages, or most of those damages, and put the line in there, because it's effective to put the line in there at that point.
To
So
actually, one comment here in our chat also reminded me of the last one about the gunpowder just triggered, because like this is applicable there as well. And so let's just trigger some US people. Gun control, for example, is one of those things. Like there's a risk to having guns, and maybe we need reasonable laws and restrictions and regulations about guns. Some countries entirely ban guns or have it extremely restrictive, and so like we assess like the damage that can be done, and then make decisions about where we want to draw a line to minimize the risk. We of course don't get rid of it completely. There are reasonable guidelines to where even in Germany you can have guns, and yet like we as a society politically try to find a line where we are okay with some risk and uh, damages, I guess, but also try to minimize as much as how that possible. We don't want to live in a society where everything is forbidden, nobody is allowed to leave the house and so forth, just to stop every crime. We expect and accept a level of crime. And so yeah, I'm just saying, like, these are very interesting discussions, and we can see them everywhere. Where do we draw the line? And I think that's equally applicable to like a guide like this. Does it cross the line or not? Maybe not. It depends on the people you ask. I think we are far away from the line with that guide.
yeah, easy conversation when you have two people, both of them are from Europe.
Mhm.
Let's retry this next time with someone from the US. No, anyway, again, I think it's a lot about adapting, right? You do something, and then you see what are the consequences of doing, or just enabling people to do something, and then if that's definitely bad, you maybe throw a line in there, and yeah, I think every organization, every group of any society is trying to do that, right? And of course, everyone is doing it a little different, because they feel the risk a little different, or just they developed the feel for that risk in a different manner. So it's definitely a very, very bigger discussion, and very complicated. But yeah, of course, if all of us will think about, let's just look at the data and see what it makes sense and what not. I think, and I think every people with some scientific mind will think that's a good thing to do, but of course it's not that simple, unfortunately. um by the way, this was very, very, very fun. I'm enjoying this so much. And of course we are so much later than what I planned, but I really think at some point we have to stop, unfortunately. um, Fabian, thank you so much. I will never stop thanking you, probably. But thank you so much for all the people who are watching this. This is probably quite a record for this podcast. So thank you everyone again. If you enjoyed this, uh, consider sharing this with some friends. This video will be re-uploaded on YouTube. The audio will be re-uploaded on the podcast platforms like Spotify and everything. So stay tuned, and maybe hit like, subscribe to know whenever a new episode is out. uh, Thanks again, Fabian. Hopefully it was fun and enjoying for you as well.
Yeah, it was a
uh,
lot of fun. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's also very interesting because I read certain news and articles, and having, you provided me the list of articles. Maybe I would have not looked at them or read them. So it's interesting to kind of like force, sounds so negative, but like to look at some news that somebody else finds interesting in the security space, and then trying to think about them. So yeah,
yeah.
it was a cool format. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly the purpose of the project. I'm forcing myself even to read more news, just because I have to select the one that I think are the most interesting. And still, it's not it's not enough until I speak with someone. Especially, I look for people who are more experienced than me, or just have a different point of views, or just have a different background. This was perfect, just because you have a totally different background than me. That's so much more insightful, right? I learned so much today. Hopefully all the people that are watching this are also learning something. And if you did, stay tuned for the next episode. Once again, thank you so much, everyone, and have a good night or good morning, whatever, depending on where you are. Okay, thank you so much. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.